What if the most powerful wealth building tool isn't just for the elite, but for anyone with a smartphone? Meet Alessandro Chesser, a fintech trailblazer on a mission to democratize estate planning. As the founder and CEO of Dynasty, Alessandro is transforming the way Americans approach wealth preservation by making living trusts accessible, affordable, and digital. Alessandro's journey began at 16, selling financial products at Bank of America. His journey led him to become the first sales hire at Carta, where he played a pivotal role in scaling the company from zero to over $300 million in annual recurring revenue. Now, with Dynasty, he's leveraging his extensive experience to simplify the complex world of trusts, aiming to make them a standard part of financial planning for all. Through the innovative use of technology and a commitment to transparency, Alessandro is not only challenging traditional estate planning, but also addressing systematic issues such as pay equity and financial literacy. His work is a testament to the belief that everyone deserves the tools to secure their financial future. And before we start the episode, a quick word from our sponsor, Deep Wealth and the Deep Wealth Mastery Program. Here's Sanjay, a graduate of Deep Wealth Mastery, and he says, the investment I made in the Deep Wealth Mastery Program, it's a rounding error compared to the value created today and the future value I'll receive. Or how about William, who says, and I love this, a company that's attractive to sell is also a great one to own. The Deep Wealth Mastery Program gives me the best of both worlds. Now, speaking of growth and adding value, check out what Leon says. He says that the Deep Wealth Mastery Program changed how and who we hire. We've now begun to hire talent today that we never would have hired if it weren't for the program. The talent we're hiring today is helping both increase our growth and profits and our future enterprise value. Man, I love that kind of feedback because it's that kind of feedback that's what gets me out of bed every day. Deep Wealth Mastery System, it's the only system based on a 9-figure deal. That was my deal. And as you know, I said no to a 7-figure offer, created a system that we now call Deep Wealth Mastery. And that's what helped myself and my business partners welcome from a different buyer, a different offer, a 9-figure deal. So if you're interested in growing your profits, preparing for a future liquidity event, whether that's 2 years away or 22 years away, and if you want to optimize your post-exit life, Deep Wealth Mastery is for you. Please email success@deepwealth.com. Again, that's success, SUCCESS, at deepwealth.com. We'll send you all the information about Deep Wealth Mastery, otherwise known as the Scale for Ultimate Sales System. That's where you want to be. You want to be with other successful business owners, entrepreneurs, and founders just like you who are looking to create market disruptions. Whether you're a startup, whether you've been in business for 3 or 4 decades, whether you're manufacturing, whether you're high-tech, SaaS, low-tech, whatever the case may be, come in and network with other business owners, with other businesses just like you, because they all want to lock in their financial freedom and enjoy both success and fulfillment. Again, that's a 90-day Deep Wealth Mastery Program. It has your name on it. All you need to do is take the next step. Please send an email to success@deepwealth.com. Deep Wealth Nation, welcome to another episode of the Deep Wealth Podcast. Well, for all you business owners, founders, entrepreneurs out there, I've got a question for you. Would you like the inside track that when the time is right for your exit, or perhaps you're doing some kind of family transition, you have an above board way to secure financial freedom, your legacy, in a way that you probably haven't heard of, but you should? Would you also like to hear from a founder who knows a thing or two about scaling? And if you said yes to both those things, you've come to the right place. We have a very special guest in the house of Deep Wealth. Alessandro, welcome to the Deep Wealth Podcast. An absolute pleasure to have you with us. There's always a story behind the story. What's your story? What got you from where you were to where you are today?
Yeah. Thanks for having me on the show. Everything that I've done in my entire career has led me to this point. My very first job at 16 years old was at Bank of America, working with high net worth individuals who came into the bank and needed help with their investments or their bank accounts or loans or whatnot, in addition to the fact that they would come in with their living trust documents. And so the banks actually trained us on how to interpret these trust documents and how to make sure that we knew how to talk about them with the clients. And so that was the very beginning of my career. I spent almost a decade in financial services. And then after that, I ended up working for Silicon Valley startups, worked for a few different ad tech companies. And then I ended up at a company called Carta, who now is a couple thousand employees. I joined as the first sales hire in 2014. And Over the course of 8 years, we got up to about $300 million in annual recurring revenue. And all we did at Carta was we helped startup companies automate legal documents, startup companies and startup investors both. And so it was legal tech and fintech type of company. We created infrastructure for all of their share transfers from the company to the employees and to the investors, like literally created like a stock market for them. Because none of that existed before for private startup companies. It was all on Excel spreadsheets and paper stock certificates. So we digitized the entire thing. And then so just combining those two experiences, financial services, working with, I knew exactly what trusts were. And then second, like working on legal tech and fintech, and combined both of those experiences. And I saw the next area that needs to be democratized, which is trust. And not just any regular trust, but the most powerful trust that the richest Americans use. Nevada trusts specifically, Nevada and South Dakota trust. We chose to become a Nevada trust company specifically, but really it's any of these. There's 4 or 5 states where the richest people have their trusts. It's South Dakota, Nevada, Wyoming, Delaware. And these states have the greatest laws for asset protection and taxes and privacy. And so that's the business we're working on democratizing now. Nevada trust for everybody.
Okay, wow, my goodness, there's a lot to go in there. And so we're going to talk about what you're doing now on the financial side and trust. But before we do, offline, you had briefly mentioned that, and you mentioned it just now from a scaling perspective with Carta. I mean, my goodness, you're one of the first hires there. The company has gone places. When it comes to scaling, and obviously the larger that we can scale our companies, Alessandro, the more that you're going to be able to help us with what you're doing right now. So it's really a win-win from that perspective. When it comes to scaling, looking back, what's the one thing as entrepreneurs that maybe we're just missing the boat on, or we're simply not doing, or we're just doing it wrong that could make all the difference for us?
There's a lot of lessons that I took from my experience at Carta. And I would say so scaling and product market fit has its own challenges. You're talking about scaling, which is separate from product market fits. Once you already have product market fit, like how do you scale it? I would say one thing that I learned, which was very important, is counterintuitive advice. And comes from my old CEO of Carta, Henry. He wrote this blog post on how to hire. And so the traditional way of hiring employees is you're scaling as you're exceeding growth targets and you need to hire people very fast. The old kind of mantra is be very careful with who you hire, go slow, spend lots of time with them, and be very calculated in the hires that you make. Well, Henry had the opposite approach, and he was like, listen, you can spend all your time with somebody, interviews, and you can do the Google tests to make sure that they're smart. He's in the end of the day, whether an employee is going to work out or not, it's really a coin toss. Like maybe they're going to be fit, maybe they're not. Because it's not just like, are they capable? It's, are they going to end up fitting in culturally? Are they going to end up being motivated? Are they going to like the mission of the company? There's all these additional factors that go into how effective they end up becoming. And so Henry's big statement is like, hire fast, fire fast, move forward. Nobody's good at hiring. So don't try not to be too smart about it and make decisions quickly. And if they work out, it works out. And if it doesn't work out, let them know quickly, because that's going to be better for the company, but it's also going to be better for them personally. Nobody wants to drag out a relationship where, like, I think it happens to be the situation when you spend months on like hiring the right person and then finally you hire them. You usually have a sense like right away of whether or not it's going to be a good fit after they start. And like, it's not working out right away, but like you spent so much time like looking for them. So you really want to make sure this is going to work out. So you're going to extend it out months and try to give them the right feedback and coaching. Usually it's not going to work out. And you're going to end up waiting maybe 6 months of your time, wasting 6 months of your time just from hiring, looking for the right person, and it still ends up not working out. And then you're slow on making the decision to let them go because you're like, there's all this sunk cost into going into this. And so his whole blog post is called How to Hire, and anybody can just search it, Henry Ward, How to Hire. He talks about hire fast, fire fast is very important for startup companies. You don't have time to waste and make decisions quick.
Yeah, I love what I'm hearing. And as you're talking about that, yeah, hands up, guilty as charged. I was one of those guys back in my startup. I would do all the tests. I would bring candidates in. I remember I would give them case studies and spend hours. And more times than not, you're right, even where on paper it was a fit, in reality it wasn't. So what I'm hearing you say is 2 things. When it comes to scaling, it's all about the people, number 1. And then number 2, hire. Done's better than perfect. Bring the people on board. And if you're seeing some red flags early on, it's probably a good indicator. Don't try and stretch it out. And make that tough decision that you have to and hire. No, it may work out, it may not work out, or not. Okay, fine. And if it does, terrific. But don't let the hiring process slow you down in terms of the scaling up and getting to where you want to get to. How am I doing with that?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And there's a very famous example that Henry uses in his blog post, which is, I think it's one of the founder of Instagram. And he actually interviewed with Facebook, and Facebook turned him down for a job. And then he ended up starting Instagram and ended up acquiring Instagram. And it cost Facebook like multiple $billion to have to acquire Instagram. And so it ended up being very successful acquisition for them, obviously. But the point is, Henry used to say, false positives are okay, false negatives are not. Like turning down the person that ends up being the right fit can cost you greatly. Like hiring the person that ends up being the wrong fit, you can quickly fix that after the fact.
Okay, lots going on there. And Deep Wealth Nation, some words for the wise for you. Soak in that and just run with that. Give it a try. Hey, done's better than perfect. Bring the person on board when you have an opening. See how it goes. And again, analysis of paralysis, all those other sayings that come to mind, just do it. To borrow another saying, just do it and see where that takes you. So it's actually a great segue in terms of what you're doing right now. So we follow your advice. We're scaling quite nicely. We now have a company. We have a terrific market fit. Revenues are coming in. The profits are coming in. We've got a great runway ahead for us. So at this segue, for most entrepreneurs, they're just going to do the same old thing that everyone else does and get the same old results that everyone else does. What's wrong with that narrative? What do you want us to know, and how do you fit into that picture?
Yeah. So what's wrong with the narrative of doing exactly what everybody else is doing? I think that if you want to be a truly great company, you have to think different. There's no one size fits all playbook for scaling a company. I think people there's a lot of business coaches out there. Here's what you do. Here's the steps you take. But every company is different. Every market is different. Every competitor is different. And so you really need to look at things from an individual company perspective and who your competitors are. And I think that trap that a lot of people fall into as they're scaling is they hire super experienced people who come in and they have a playbook. And from my experience, oftentimes somebody comes in and they use the playbook from outside and it ends up not working. It's really you have to create a brand new playbook specifically for your company. And so you can't really look at things uniformly and the one size fits all approach to building companies. And so I think that's a huge mistake that a lot of companies take. And we did it at Carta. We hired all these experienced people and they came in with their playbooks and their playbooks all failed. You have to take a more custom approach to the company that you're building and the market that you're operating and the competitors that you have. And you have to figure things out piece by piece. There definitely is not a one size fits all to building a company.
So much of that goes back to culture, which we're all about in our 9-step roadmap. Step number 2, X factors. When we have a rich, vibrant, thriving culture, it's really a competitive advantage out in the marketplace. And so with that said, we're going to put some of the growth tactics and the scaling tactics aside for just a minute. Talk to us about what you're doing now on the financial side and with trusts and what we don't know that we really should know.
So qualified small business stock, or QSBS, is the greatest tax exemption that exists. It's for C Corp shareholders. It has to be more of a technology company than a services. If your revenue is 100% services, you're not going to qualify for QSBS. So the goal of QSBS is a tax exemption that exists that allows you to sell $10 to $15 million of shares in a C Corp and pay zero taxes. Literally the greatest tax exemption that exists. Where else can you sell $15 million worth of shares and pay zero taxes on capital gains? There's nowhere else you can do that. The objective of this tax exemption is to incentivize investors to invest in startup companies. That was the whole purpose. It was 1991 and the laws were created that allow investors to invest in startup companies and pay zero taxes on $10 to $15 million in capital gains. And the idea was to get more investors to invest in startup companies, create more startup companies, create more jobs for employees, have more successful outcomes, and reinvest that money back into the ecosystem, creating more startup companies. This really worked. I mean, the US is the leader globally when it comes to startup companies. And a lot of that has to do with the tax incentives that exist that create more startups by having more investors that want to invest in startups is huge. And so if you're not familiar with QSPS, I suggest you look into it, make sure your startup qualifies for a lot of, like I said, if you're an early stage startup company and you're a technology company, a lot of your revenue is more on the software or technology side. Like if you're selling something online, there's a good chance you're going to qualify for QSPS. And the criteria is though that you have to be a C Corp. You have to hold the shares for at least 5 years to get the tax exemption. And you have to acquire the shares, which all startup founders are going to qualify for this, but you have to acquire the shares before the company has $50 million in assets. So all the early employees, if you're raising capital, the second you have more than $50 million in assets, the employees after that will not qualify and the investors after that will not qualify. But all the early, it's really there to incentivize early investors or early employees. But for those that do qualify, it's $10 million for any shares that were issued before July 4th of this year. July 4th is the big, beautiful bill date. And any company after July 4th, any shares issued after July 4th. So if you're going to start a C Corp, it's a great time to do it because you're automatically going to get this is changed from $10 million exemption to $15 million exemption. So the first $15 million will be 100% tax free if you hold the shares for 5 years. And so it's something that I think a lot of founders are not really familiar with. And the way I learned about it was in the early days of Carta, one of our employees actually who came from PwC told us about it. I never heard of it before. And I'd been in the startup space for a while. And I was like, really? You can pay zero taxes on $10 million in gains? But for employees, you can't actually qualify for that holding period, the 5 years, unless you exercise you have to hold the shares for 5 years. So you have to exercise early. Any employees that work for startup companies, make sure you look into this and make sure you do an analysis on how much it's going to cost you to exercise. And if you're bullish on the company, like you should definitely do it if you can qualify for QSPS, because otherwise you're going to lose close to half your money in taxes if you don't. When my company, GetDynasty.com, does is we help people actually multiply their QSPS benefit by creating trust for family members. So you get the $10 million exemption in your name, but if you create trust for your two kids and your wife, for example, each trust will get its own QSPS exemption. So 3 trusts will give your family an additional $30 million in tax-free capital gains. So, 3 trusts times 10 million each, $30 million in tax-free capital gain eligibility. And plus the 10 million that you already have in your name, that means $40 million, 100% tax-free, like literally the greatest tax exemption that exists.
Okay, so let's walk this back. There's a lot there. It all sounds exciting. So QSBS, the qualified small business stock. And what I'm hearing you say is when we have a QSBS, we can do this special tax exemption where when we've held it for 5 years, 100% of the capital gains, there's zero tax on it as long as we can meet some certain criteria. Now, I'm familiar with a C Corp and an LLC and all the other types of statuses for companies. It sounds like only a C Corp, from what you're saying, is going to qualify. For someone in Deep Wealth Nation who's not even sure what kind of company they have, so what's a C Corp? What's the difference between a C Corp and an S Corp and an LLC? And what should they know about this?
Yeah, so LLCs and S Corps are typically taxed as a pass-through entity. So the taxes can be passed through to the individual. The individual is not necessarily an employee, but more of a member of this pass-through entity. And so like if you were working with an LLC, you would pay taxes yourself. You'd be 1099 and you wouldn't have a W-2. C Corp, you're taxed as a corporation. So the company is not passing through the taxes directly to the individual. So the company would be paying taxes first, then passing the income to the employees as W-2 income, and then the employees will pay their own separate taxes. So if you have like a cash flow positive business, it is better to do an LLC or an S Corp because you can pass through the tax. You're going to not get double taxed. And so you can be more tax efficient. But if your goal is to sell the company or, IPO or, raise venture capital, for example, you definitely want to be a C Corp. And I think if you're going to raise venture capital, then your plan is usually to exit. It's either going to be to exit to selling the company or to go public. And so if you're optimizing for exit, then do a C Corp and then optimize for QSPS because you can get all these millions of dollars in tax-free gains. But if your goal, on the other hand, is just to operate a profitable business forever and never exit, then, you're better off doing one of these pass-through entities like an LLC or an S corp. We're not a CPA. I'm not going to give any tax advice here. I would say talk to your CPA and get confirmation on all this. But typically that's how it works. If it's a cash flow positive business that you never intend to sell, better to be an LLC or an S corp. And if it's the opposite and you're either looking to raise venture capital or you're looking to sell it in the future, then like C corp is probably going to be better.
Okay, and Default Nation, as we just heard, this is not financial advice. This is just Alessandro, myself. We're just sharing some thoughts, some stories with each other. Always check with your proper advisors in terms of what you should be doing on the financial side. But you made an important distinction. And what I heard was, if I don't plan to have some kind of an exit, perhaps it's going public, perhaps it's getting some investment in the company, selling some of the company, all of the company. If that's not the plan, if I'm going to have a generational family business going on here, then what we're talking about, the QSBS, isn't where I want to be. But if I know, at one point I am going to be exiting the company, then having the company as a C Corp and looking into the QSBS in terms of qualifying for that and getting all that set up, that's where I want to be because there's some tremendous upsides that are there for me. So it's a great segue, Alessandro, in terms of what you're doing now at Dynasty. So where do you play a role in that? When do you start and when do you enter the process? And then what happens from there? Why don't you walk us through that?
Yeah. So when you start planning from day one, you're going to start a company. What type of company are you going to build? Is this going to be optimized for acquisition? Is this going to be, you're going to raise capital? Or are you just going to build a cash flow laundromat, for example? And like the type of business is very important because it needs to be like more of a technology company in order to qualify for QSBS regardless. So the first thing to look at is like the type of company you're building and whether it's going to qualify for QSBS. If it does qualify for QSBS and your goal is to exit, then you really should be structuring as a C Corp right out of the gate so you can start the clock for that 5-year holding period. The problem is, some people are like, oh, I'll just start as an LLC. And then if I end up thinking later down the line, I'm going to sell it, I'll convert it to C Corp. But then once you convert it, now the 5-year clock starts. I have a lot of people in that situation where they're an LLC right now. And like, they're like, oh, I'm going to sell my company. I want to get QSBS. It's like, well, now you're going to have to wait 5 years. With the new rules, there's a little bit of flexibility on that 5 years now. You can sell it at the 3-year mark and get 50% of the QSBS exclusion, or sell it at the 4-year mark and get 75% of the exclusion. But you still have to wait 3 years minimum just to get 50%. So I would say you want to do that planning day one, like when you're starting your company. Is your company going to be eligible for QSBS based on the type of company it is? Yes or no? If it is, then how do you want to structure your company? Do you want to optimize for exit, or do you want to optimize just for cash flow positive, own it forever? And I think making those decisions on day one, because otherwise it's going to be very hard to switch around later.
Okay, so some terrific advice for Default Nation. Like anything else, hey, know where you want to be. And if, yes, I'm going to be doing an exit, this is where I want to be, then it's cleaner, it's more efficient, time-wise, money-wise, to actually start off as a C corporation as opposed to trying to change things up a little bit later on. And it sounds like there's some other implications that are going on and it can be time consuming, more complex. And Alessandro, going back to something that you said, so if I'm a manufacturing company, based on what you're saying, it sounds like this may not be eligible for me. It's only for technology kinds of companies, service types of companies. Who would, yes, this is a perfect fit. So who would be a perfect fit for this? And hey, you know what? You're there. Sorry. It's not a fit. It's not allowed under the program. What is that looking like?
Yeah, so I would say like the perfect fits are like, your traditional software company selling software as a service, or your traditional like e-commerce company, like selling products up through the internet are a great fit. Usually venture funded startups, like I would say 95%, 99% are going to qualify. But for those that are like more regulated industries, let's say you're a lender and maybe you're using a little bit of technology, but most of your revenue is tied to just straight like services, then you're probably not going to qualify. You want to talk to a lawyer regardless and ask them, because there is a little bit of gray area. It's not black and white. Like there's a little bit of gray area, but I would say like traditional, like non-venture funded businesses, if it's a technology company, that's the distinction. Are you a services company or are you a technology company? If you're more of a technology company, then like, and you're not in a regulated industry, like odds are you're probably going to qualify.
Got it. Okay. And Alessandro, I know one of the things that you're doing at Dynasty, and when I was doing some of the background, I really liked what I was reading about this and learning about this. You want to, if I can use the word, democratize trusts. And you want to take trust out there so that the typical entrepreneur who's eligible, one, knows about it, and two, can benefit from that. So talk to us about that. Did you just wake up one day and say, hey, I'm going to be doing this? Or where did that light bulb moment come for you? What led to that?
Yeah, so the Nevada Trust Company specifically, during our time at Carta, we saw all these cap tables. That's what Carta is, cap table management platform for startups. And so we saw all the Carta's got a monopoly, like close to a monopoly. Like 70%, I think, of startups are on Carta's platform, pre-IPO startups. And so when you look at these and we did all the onboardings, my teams helped get the Excel-based cap tables and move them into software. And so we look at all these cap tables and we saw that a very small percentage of founders would put their founder shares into like multiple trusts for family members. And it was like, why are they doing that? Are they just being super generous? Or are they just giving away all their shares? I actually learned about it because one of our investors did this and created a bunch of trusts and sold $40 million and paid zero taxes and told me about it. And so when I heard that, I was like, that's incredible. Why doesn't everybody do that? And he's, oh, because it costs a couple $100,000 to set it up and it costs like $25,000 a year just to maintain it. I was like, it shouldn't cost that much. Like these are templated legal documents. Like, why can't we need to fix that? And so that's when we started looking into turning it into an actual business. And we left and we raised capital and we raised $6 million and we went through the process of becoming a Nevada trust company. You know, Nevada is like the number one state in the country when it comes to trust. Like they have all the best rules that allow you to do all these crazy things with trusts that help minimize taxes and help protect assets from everything, lawsuits and bankruptcy, creditors, even divorce. And so we knew we were going to become a Nevada trust company and we knew we wanted to democratize Nevada trust for anybody who wants to use a Nevada trust. Why not? Why not let them, if it's a farmer in Oklahoma who wants to protect their farm from lawsuits, why not? Why shouldn't we let them do that? Because the old model, they're not going to be able to afford it. But with our model, we can make it available to them. The billionaires do this. Why shouldn't everybody else? But as we became a trust company, in the mantra of building a successful startup and going 0 to 1, you want to go really narrow with your first customer profile and create a very solid business and then expand inch by inch. The reason why you want to go narrow is because the goal is to create obsessively happy customers, deliriously happy customers. That's the right phrase. You want to make your customers deliriously happy. And the only way to do that is to be very specific on who you're selling to and what problem you're solving. You can get really good at solving that. If you just focus on one problem specifically, you can get very good at solving that one problem and you can create the best experience possible. And so that's we focused in on startup founders and QSBS stacking. It's one very narrow problem. Like nobody else is doing this. So we're the only player in the market that's completely full stack licensed Nevada Trust Company doing QSBS stacking for startup founders. It's very narrow. And so it allows us to go and take the market very quickly and acquire large amounts of customers every single month and you become the de facto solution. And then once we're the de facto solution, then we expand the market inch by inch and we go from startup founders to startup investors. And then we go to the limited partners at the venture funds. And then we go to the masses and we help everybody, right? But inch by inch, versus if we just try to go to the masses in the very beginning, like there's all types of competition trying to go after the mass market customers. And it's hard to make anybody deliriously happy if I'm like, one guy's putting a farm in the trust, another woman's putting her crypto in the trust. Like, how do you create a deliriously happy customer when you're trying to solve everybody's problem and everybody has different problems? And so we really focused in on this one problem, and then the plan is to expand over time.
Okay, my goodness. So there's a lot there. So a few things. Let's go back to some of the numbers just to put this in perspective. And you're saying that we do this right. And we're working with you, the Dynasty team, through QSBS. And again, just putting some numbers out there, I could have perhaps $40 million in trusts that are going to be exempted. So to use round numbers, I have some kind of liquidity event, which is obviously what we're all about here at Deep Wealth. Let's just make the math easy. I have a $100 million liquidity event. So from that $100 million, which would normally be taxable, what I'm hearing, and you can say, Jeffrey, on base, off base, the $100 million less the $40 million, that's exempt, it's now $60 million. That's the taxable amount and not the $100 million. How am I doing with that?
That's exactly right. But, one interesting caveat is that there are examples of people creating 10 plus trusts and getting over $100 million in tax-free capital gains attached to these trusts. And one example is the founder of Roblox. You can read about it in the New York Times. Roblox founder, QSBS, you'll see it. They created 12 trusts and got $120 million in tax-free capital gains. So that's why it's called trust stacking. You stack a bunch of trusts and they each get QSBS exemptions.
And so there's always going to be outliers there, and perhaps that's the way to go, perhaps that's not. But Alessandro, you, the Dynasty team, it sounds like you're going to just be helping me go through that. So that's what's going on there. However many trusts I have that are QSBS under that umbrella, that's what I'm subtracting from the net amount from my liquidity event. That's going to be taken out of the mix, and whatever's left over, that's where I'm getting taxed on. So that's significant savings that we're talking about. And then the other thing that I heard you say, and I love it, as an entrepreneur, you're going out there, you're solving a problem. Up until you covered this problem, you found out about this problem, you asked the right questions. Why is it so complex? Why is it so expensive? And it sounds like with Dynasty, you and the team, you're now simplifying that process and you're taking the high costs out of it. And you've been focusing on entrepreneurs. Sure, down the road, maybe you'll do something else and expand that into other areas of the market. But right now, for founders, for entrepreneurs who know they're going to have some kind of liquidity event, again, going public, selling part of the company, all of the company, you're there with the QSBS trust services to sign me up and get me going in that direction. So what's some of the secret sauce when I'm working with you and the Dynasty team? What's going on with that? What would that look like time-wise and approximate cost, not down to the penny, but just very high level? What's that looking like?
Yeah, so we charge $1,500 a year for 4 trusts. And that covers trust creation, trust administration, and annual tax filing. So it's like 5% of the traditional cost of doing this. We can be so much cheaper because we only do this. We only work with founders. We only work with QSBS stacking stock, like founder shares. And so we're not going to help you with your farm. We're not going to help you with your crypto. We're not going to help you with your home. And so we're very specific. So it allows us to create this like full stack product where everything is automated and it's like a factory for one specific problem, right? And we've solved that problem very effectively. The old model is this will take you 3 to 4 months to complete you have to work with the lawyer. They're putting all this customization into your trust. They're helping you with all your other assets as well. And they're looking at the full picture. They're doing all your, then they add in a CPA for the tax planning. And then once you're done creating the trust and you work with the trust company to do the actual trust administration, and then they help you file the tax returns too. And so by the time you're done with this 3, 4 months and you're working with the trust company that's charging you, $10, $20, $30,000 a year for the administration because they're doing everything manually. They're using fax machines, they're using filing cabinets, where we are a complete like venture-backed technology company. And we've automated trust creation. We've automated trust administration. We've automated the filing of the tax returns because we only do it for this specific use case. And so that's how we're able to be significantly more cost effective. And we can get these trusts done in a matter of days. Our fastest is 3 days, and we're trying to get it done in 2 days, like next week. And so like eventually we're going to get it done in 1 day for a customer. And that's lightning compared to the old model of doing this.
And so what I'm hearing you say, Alessandro, is you're taking your background before you started Dynasty, all of your entrepreneurial experience, and you're now putting your focus and your energy into this because what you're saying is, hey, I am not going to be all things to all people. So if you want to do your home and other kinds of assets, I'm probably not the company. We aren't the company for you. But if you have a company that fits the specific criteria and you fit within our system, then for $1,500 a year, you'll have 4 trusts. And behind the scenes, we're automating everything. You're not going to have to go from one advisor to the next advisor and have to find out, okay, who's the tax specialist or who's the trust specialist and where am I going to be going for this or that? It's a one size or a one-stop shop, which is Dynasty. You've done all this in the background. I'm making an assumption here, and you'll clarify, of course, behind the scenes in terms of the regulations and any changes and whatever needs to be done. You're tracking all that for me. So I simply show up, sign the proper documentation, pay your service fee, and then behind the scenes, you're doing everything else. So I'm saving time, I'm saving money and effort so I can go back, build my business, scale it, take it to a terrific level, and actually appreciate what you're helping me do on the back end. When it comes time for my liquidity event, I'm going to have hopefully lower taxes by the sounds of it. How am I doing with that?
That's exactly right. You're going to work with us. We're going to, it's really a white glove like onboarding process. We don't put a lot of work on your plate. We get on a couple phone calls with you. We extract everything we need. We automate it on our end. We do have add-on packages for those that want to add on an attorney or add on a CPA. Like we have like law firm and CPA firm partner that we work with. You pay a few $1,000s extra. You end up with the CPA or lawyer add-on. That feels a little bit closer to like the traditional process. Obviously, it slows things down. But for those that, want extra assurance and don't want to just work with the startup company by themselves, like I would say 95% of our customers don't do that. 95% just sign up and, use our product like out of the box as is. But for those that want the more sophisticated type planning, like we have the resources to do it.
Okay. So what I'm hearing you say is, hey, we have a one and done over here, but Jeffrey, you want to get a little fancy, you want to customize it. Okay, I can't give you the quicker turnaround time or the lower service fees, but I can accommodate you, and we have the ability to do that. And so, Alessandro, I'm thinking now from a listener in Deep Wealth Nation, and they're listening in to our fireside chat, just you and I here, and they're saying, okay, let me get this straight. I can get this trust and up to 4 trusts with the Dynasty and team, and I'm saving up to $40 million. Hey, it sounds too good to be true. What's the catch? Are there any catches here?
So the important thing to know is that these aren't your trusts. You're setting up trust funds for these beneficiaries, whether it's your children or your parents, your siblings, your spouse, whoever. It's their money, not your money. So you can't look at it from the perspective of, oh, this is all my tax-free money. No, the only reason why the tax savings are coming is because you're spreading out your shares to people that are not owners in your company. Now they're becoming owners, and so they get their own QSBS eligibility. For example, like me giving my shares to my brother directly, he would have complete control of those shares and he could go spend the money on whatever he wants after we exit. Versus when I put it in a trust, there's a little bit more control in place of like how that money can be reinvested and what the distributions can be used for. And so me as the trust creator, I can have some level of influence in the trusts and how the funds are invested. If I want the trust to invest in real estate, the trust will buy real estate. If I want the trust to invest in startups, the trust will invest in startups. And so it's like, you have to look at it as like a trust fund that you can control. It's more like an investment account. You can't look at it as your personal piggy bank. You have to look at it as like, these are investment account trust funds for your beneficiaries. It's their money. It's not your money. The IRS would never let you maximize QSBS for your own individual purposes. It has to be for other people.
Okay, some terrific insights there. And so, Deep Wealth Nation, if you were planning on having your children or spouse or family members at one point in time, have them be the beneficiary or benefit financially, this is definitely one way to go. But Deep Wealth Nation, we just heard it straight from the source. If you're saying, hey, I can get these 4 trusts and it's $40 million I can play with down the road, it's not taxable, not happening. Uncle Sam is not going to let you do that. It has to be for specific beneficiaries. Now, Alessandro, is there a time limit to these trusts? Do they expire at one point in time that you then have to do something, or is that infinitum? How does that work?
No, these are Nevada Dynasty trusts. That's another benefit of using Nevada trusts is these trusts can live for 365 years. So the whole purpose is like to create multi-generational wealth planning. They go to your children and then they go to their children and then their children. And it's a fortress that's excluded from estate taxes for 300. It never has to pay that 40% estate tax for 365 years. And while the assets are held in these trusts, they're protected from everything, as I mentioned, like lawsuits, creditors. If anybody gets divorced, whether it's the grantor or the beneficiaries, it doesn't matter. These trusts are excluded from their estate, so they're not going to be at risk of a divorce. So if you're passing money to your children and you're worried that they're going to get married and then get divorced and lose half your money, you don't have to worry about that anymore. Like these trusts are going to create that infrastructure, that fortress to provide for multiple generations and make sure that there's like money left over. And so that's the purpose of them. It's not usually the distributions are limited, like for cost of living, housing, healthcare, education, transportation. Usually the money in these trusts is not going to be used for, cannot be used for frivolous spending, gambling, whatever, like vacations, like sports cars. Like usually the purpose is to provide like a minimum standard of living for like multiple generations. And so because they can exist for 365 years, it just really creates a lot of flexibility on the planning side.
Has some terrific news here in terms of what you're doing. And if we flip the script for just a second, because here you are, you're a startup, you found an inefficient marketplace. You went out, you got some investment, and you now have this company that's out there that's making it more efficient. It's making it more accessible. So from one entrepreneur to another, what's that been like? Because it sounds like you're going up against some very established, well-funded, multi-gazillion dollar companies. You're the new kid on the block. How's it been for you?
I think all the lawyers like push back against us. You can't do this, and I'm like, we've already done over 100 customers in 90 days. And we work with the largest estate planning firm in the country as a partner anyways. So, I think that there's always going to be the incumbents, and we're not going after their business though. Like I'm not going after the customers that are going to go pay $100,000 to set up trust. Like they can go do that. Like Like, we're not going after that. We're going after the best time to set these trusts up is day one when you start your company, because there's gift tax implications. The best time to do it is when the shares are worth zero, because there's no gift tax. The longer you wait, the more the shares go up in value, the more gift tax implications you're going to have. So like, that's the problem we're trying to solve. We're trying to make it possible for a startup founder to do this from day one. But founders from day one can't afford $100,000 to create this. So like, we're expanding the market and going after a new customer that wouldn't do this otherwise. So that's my argument to them, is we're not going after your customers. We're creating a new group of customers. But with that said, like, they're always going to look at us as threatening. And that's the nature of the business. Like, we're a venture funded startup and they are not. And we're very different.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And to your point, for someone who's a founder, even if they knew about this, which they probably don't, even if they wanted to do this because, yeah, hey, it sounds great. I don't have the time. I don't have the money. This is way too complex. Not happening. So Dynasty, you and the team, you're coming on board here. Hey, Jeffrey, we can have it done within days for you. Go focus on your business, but we have you covered. And Alessandro, you're exactly right. When I have a clean slate, I'm starting with zero. And I put these trusts in place. That's the most tax efficient. That is the best way to do it. And it's not taking away from my next marketing campaign or my next hire, which we were talking about earlier, because let's face it, $1,500 a year, it's relatively inexpensive. It's a rounding error compared to the savings. And then on the flip side, there's a 365-year limit, you're telling me, on the trust. For all intents and purposes, it might as well be forever, because obviously, sadly, none of us will be around for that. But we're protecting the family, or whoever the beneficiaries are, they have something that protects them, whether they get married and that marriage doesn't work out. There's all kinds of protection in it for them. So talk about the gift that keeps on giving for the beneficiaries, where I have the foresight to be able to do this for them. Wow, it's a complete game changer. And Alessandro, when it comes to liquidity events now, and I have these trusts that are in place, does it interfere or make it more complex when I have a buyer coming in and saying, oh my goodness, you have all these QSBS trusts going on here. No go, Jeffrey. We don't want to go down that path. Any issues there, or it's part of the course?
Yeah, I'll start with the second question, which is related to, investors coming in and taking a look at the cap table and seeing if there's all these trusts. Like, they're very familiar with it. The most successful investors and founders do this, and they know that. The founder's still going to retain the voting rights for the shares, and that's usually what they care about. But other than that, this is estate planning. Estate planning is it's for the richest Americans too. Like, we're not doing anything below board. Like you said in the very beginning, it's above board. These are very known strategies that the most successful Americans use. And so we want to make it available for everybody. And so if anybody were to push back, you just point to all the public examples. Oh, how come they can do this? Like, why aren't you, it doesn't make sense to stop anybody from doing it. The investors use this. They're not going to stop a founder from doing it. And then your first question, what does this look like for the beneficiaries? I mean, we are democratizing trust funds. That's really what this consists. Multi-generational trust funds. Most Americans don't have a trust fund. And people think that you need millions of dollars to create a trust fund. No, if you have a company, you can create that trust fund from day one. You can put 10% of your shares into these trust funds. And if the company ends up working out really well, you got a lot of tax savings, but you have this like multi-generational structure that can provide for your family for 365 years. And so democratizing trust funds, like, it's never too early to create that trust. Like, if you can afford $1,500 per year for up to 4, like, do it. And, a worst case scenario is like your company doesn't make it and it goes out of business. Like, you don't have to pay for the trust funds anymore. And like, you haven't risked, the only risk is that $1,500 per year. Maybe a few years goes by, the company goes out of business, you've lost $4,500. But if it does work, your fixed cost is like $1,500 a year. But if it does work, you get millions of dollars in tax-free capital gains. Like, it's enormous upside potential. And so I think for those that have children, that have spouse, even if you don't, the ability to plan for like future children and create these trust funds in a tax efficient manner, like, it didn't exist before.
As we're talking about this, to me, it's like insurance. If we look to, I'm going to insure my house, and I insure my house year after year, I've never used it, but I've still insured my house. So same kind of thing with this. Hey, I'm going to insure the future for whoever the beneficiaries are. And as we enter the golden era here, as Americans going down this path for wealth accumulation, wealth preservation, this is one terrific way of doing it, completely above board. It's been for the elite up to this point. You're democratizing trust to get this out there to every entrepreneur who wants it. You've made it accessible. It's incredibly affordable, and it's easy. It's quick. It doesn't get any better with that. So Deep Wealth Nation, you've heard something that you probably haven't heard before, and it's something that you should look into. And Alessandro, before we go into our wrap up mode, as I'm looking at the time here and I'm looking at my list of questions, which I've barely begun to get through, is there a question I haven't yet asked, or even a theme, a topic, or a message that you want to get out to Deep Wealth Nation before we go into the wrap up mode?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is and you mentioned it earlier, like the planning, the earlier, the better. The earlier you set this up, the more taxes you can save. The longer you wait, the more gift tax implications and the more restricted you're going to be from being able to create trust and get assets out of your name. Estate planning works well when you have high appreciating assets, but you gift them to the trust before the trust go up in value.
Absolutely love preparation, as we say here at Deep Wealth and with our 9-step roadmap. Preparation, when it's done well, is the gift that keeps on giving. The time, the effort, even the small investment that goes into it, the ROI, it's a rounding error relative to what you're getting from doing that. So absolutely love that. So that said, Alessandro, we're going to go into wrap-up mode, and it's a tradition here in the Deep Wealth Podcast. It's my privilege, my honor, where every single guest, I ask the same question. It's a really fun question. Let me set this up for you. When you think of the movie Back to the Future, you have that wonderful and magical DeLorean car that can take you to any point in time. So imagine now it's tomorrow morning. This is the fun part. You look outside your window, and not only is the DeLorean car there, it's curbside. The door is open. It's waiting for you to hop into what you do. You're now going to go back to any point in your life. Alessandro, as a young child, a teenager, whatever point in time it would be, what would you tell your younger self in terms of life lessons, life wisdom, or, hey, Alessandro, do this, but don't do that? What would that sound like?
I think that the most important thing for me is, I would say for me personally, like I waited a long time to take the leap into entrepreneurship. I waited until I had a successful outcome at my last startup company. I waited until I got married and had kids. I don't know why I did that. I started a company. I should have done it before. I think like the earlier, the better. That's my biggest regret is like, I kind of did the opposite. I waited until I had a lot of responsibilities and then I started a company. I would say doing it before you have all the responsibilities of children and whatnot, that's when you can take the risk. That's when it makes more sense. And so that to me is just hindsight's 2020, but going back in time, I would have probably taken the leap and started a company a lot sooner.
Well, Alessandro, as the saying goes, better late than never, and you did it. So congratulations to you on that. And it's also great advice. Hey, don't wait to start your entrepreneurial journey. It's actually going back to how we began the conversation where you shared when it comes to hiring, just do it. Don't overanalyze and see how it goes. You can always change course. And if it works out, great. If it doesn't, that's okay too. At least you're out there and you're doing it. One of my sayings is dreamers dream, doers do. And if you look out there at the successful people, it wasn't perfect. They just started, they went out there, they did it. But the dreamer, we all know who these people are. They tell us their dreams and how big it's going to be, but nothing happens. It's just talk. It's like writing on the sand. It's there 1 second, gone the next. So it's some terrific advice. And let me ask you this. Someone in Deep Wealth Nation, Alessandro, they have a question for you or the team. They even want to sign up and get things going. Where would be the best place online that someone could reach you?
LinkedIn is probably the best. Alessandro Chesser. You can find me on LinkedIn or you can find me on Twitter or x.com. That would be the best ways to get a hold of me.
Deep Wealth Nation, doesn't get any easier. Go to the show notes, all of Alessandro's contact information, all the sites. It's all there. It's a point and click. Well, it's official, Alessandro. Congratulations. As we like to say here at Deep Wealth, it's a wrap. May you continue to thrive and prosper while you remain healthy and safe. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
So there you have it, Deep Wealth Nation. What did you think? So with all that said, and as we wrap it up, I have another question for you. Actually, it's more of a personal favor. Did you find this episode helpful? Have you found other episodes of the Deep Wealth Podcast empowering and a game changer for your journey? And if you said yes, and I really hope you did, I have a small but really meaningful way that you can actually help us out and keep these episodes coming to you. Are you ready for it? The dramatic pause. I'll just wait a moment. Drum roll, please. Subscribe. Please subscribe to the Deep Wealth Podcast on your favorite podcast channel. When you subscribe to the Deep Wealth Podcast, you're saving yourself time. Every episode automatically comes to you. And I want you to know that we meticulously craft every one of our episodes to have impactful strategies, stories, expert insights that are designed to help you grow your profits, increase the value of your business, and yes, even optimize your post-exit life and your life right now, whatever you want that to look like. And every time you subscribe and a fellow entrepreneur subscribe, it's a testament to how together, yes, we are changing the social fabric of society. one business owner at a time, one liquidity event at a time. So don't let the momentum stop here. Subscribe now on your favorite podcast channel. You'll never miss an episode. You'll be the first to hear from the top industry leaders, the innovators, the disruptors that are really changing and shaping the business world. And maybe you're commuting, maybe you're at the gym, maybe you're taking a well-deserved break that we spoke all about on this episode. The Deep Wealth Podcast, it's your reliable source for the next big idea that could literally revolutionize your business. So once again, please hit that subscribe button, stay connected, inspired, and ahead of the curve. And again, your next big breakthrough moment, it might just be one episode away. Maybe it was even this episode. So all that said, thank you so much for listening. And remember, your wealth isn't just about the money in the bank. It's about the depth of your journey and the impact that you're creating. So let's continue this journey together. And from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for listening to this episode. And as we love to say here at Deep Wealth, may you continue to thrive and prosper while you remain healthy and safe. Thank you so much. God bless.